This is Lisa LaRose here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM, and I'm joined by the incredible Michael J. Russ. I want to welcome you, Michael, and say hello.
Awesome. Hello to you, too.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you, and I'm super excited today because we have a very special guest, and I'm going to just put this out there. So, Michael, I'm going to ask you, have you ever felt a spark, a burning desire to do something in your soul, a passion that was so intense that it consumed your thoughts and your dreams? Well, let me tell you, the guest that we have today, I can say that that's exactly what has led his journey. So I want to first welcome Chris Johnston. And so I want to say hello. How are you today, Chris?
Hey, Chris.
So good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We're super, super excited. And we had a few minutes to talk before the show, and I said I always like to start with a quote, and one of the ones that I found was, the best work is the work that you're excited about. And I met Chris through Instagram, which is such an incredible gift as far as being able to connect people. And he is not only a podcaster, skateboarder, muralist, he is just an overall positive, amazing person. He started a podcast called Passion Pod, which can be found on many different platforms. But I just want to say, first of all, that being passionate about an idea that you have and a dream starts really with the spark within, which is that soul's fire. And even though a lot of times society has a different picture of what they think that success is, it's really that inner desire, it's that passion that drives us. And as I was reading through some of your bios, your passion, Chris, started literally when you were 14, and maybe even probably before that. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about what that spark was and how it sort of led you on your path, and then we'll just delve into whatever unfolds.
Sure.
Please.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to summarize, but I guess to try to keep it super brief, I grew up skateboarding my whole life from when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And I also played sports and stuff growing up. But I found once I went to high school when I was a freshman, I wasn't good enough at any sports to actually make a team. So even though I played basketball from like kindergarten through 8th grade, I knew that it didn't really matter how much I practiced. I just wasn't going to make the team. And so skateboarding kind of took over at that point as like the only thing that I did. And I would take the city bus downtown instead of the school bus home to go to the little local skateboard shop that we used to have in town called Underloud. And I'd be there like every day and hanging out with all my friends, and that was kind of like our clubhouse, and that was like a whole community, you know, it was like my second home really. And so from that point, I would have been like 14, that was kind of always what I wanted to do when I grew up, was I wanted to own my own skateboard shop, you know, kind of similar to what that shop was. And so time went on, and, you know, I went into corporate sales. Well, I was always in sales positions from when I was like 15. And I did different sales jobs. I went to college for business, and pretty quickly realized, like, you don't need a college degree to sell things. And I always planned on either, you know, managing somebody else's business or owning my own. So I dropped out of college just to kind of work my way up sales positions. And I was the assistant manager of a couple different jewelry stores. And then I worked for Verizon and made a bunch of money there. And then there was a whole bunch of kind of existential things happen in my life in the course of about a year. I got married, and my parents got divorced, and my dad had a heart transplant, and then I had my first kid. And so there was kind of a lot of things that really made me look at my life and go, well, if I were to die tomorrow, would I feel good about the time that I spent? And I didn't really feel good about it. That's what kind of woke me up from realizing money didn't really matter to me. And so at that point is when I decided to open up my skateboard shop. So when I was 23, it was April 11th, 2014 is when I opened Passion Board Shop. I did that for a little over a decade. And now I do a podcast as well. After my shop had hit 5 years old, I kind of felt like I did what I set out to do, and I wanted to keep pushing and learning and growing. And so I started a podcast called The Passion Pod, and it was interviewing people that were pursuing careers based on their passions to inspire others to do the same. Because in my skateboard shop, that kind of, you know, was the intent for me, was to be a role model for kids, to kind of help them get to where they wanted to be in life. And so the podcast was kind of a natural progression of that, where it was no longer limited to skateboarding, and I could reach an audience that wasn't just people in my store. And so that kind of snowballed over time. It became a bigger and bigger part of my career. Artwork became a big part of my career. I paint a lot of murals and in general do a lot of art. And as those two sides of my career became bigger and bigger, it got to a point where I was kind of rarely in my own store. And so this past July, after a little over 10 years in business, I closed my store and started just doing my show full time and art kind of on the side. And I got to say, like, I feel like I did everything I set out to do at the shop. I'm very proud of the whole thing. I'm not, it was a little sad to walk away from it, but it was leaving it in a good space. But I am in the least stressful, most enjoyable part of my life I've been in quite a long time.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And I'm wondering if you could just share for our audience, because there are a lot of times whether you're embarking on becoming an artist or a skateboarder, and it's the fear of falling. I mean, whether it's rollerblades or bike or whatever, sometimes I was a rock climber. I was a little bit of a daredevil. It's that fear and doubt. I was afraid of heights. So what was the best thing to do? Go climb a 5-pitch climb.
Yep, I went skydiving to try to get over my fear of heights. And same, like I went through a time frame when I was 27, where I was all gung-ho about, I'm going to get over all my fears. And so I was afraid of deep water from when I was like little. I was always afraid of it, even though I'm a strong swimmer. So I got scuba diving certified. So now I dive all the time. And I wouldn't say that I skydive frequently, but I have done it a couple of times.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We have a lot in common.
It is.
we definitely have a lot in common. The dropping out of college part to pursue other entrepreneurial desires and the like and in sales especially. I've been in sales since '75, and sure. You have a personality for it. That's definite. I could tell that. I could sense that when I met you the first time. But and if you're a podcaster, yeah, you in my view, these little things that we've done in our lives that have given us the tools and skill set to be able to communicate with people in a way that podcasting is perfect for.
Yeah.
It really, really is. It allows us to do so, which is why I started podcasting 20 years ago, plus actually, with Libsyn, and gave it up for a few years, about 8 or 9 years, and picked it up again. But I got to ask you, how old are you? How young are you?
How old am I now? I'm 34.
34.
And getting younger every year.
Every year. Yeah, that's amazing, man. I mean, I can think about, where I was at 34, and we go doing a lot of different things, but I gotta say, skateboarding wasn't one of them. But I've always admired people who've had that skill and tenacity to be able to, and the stick-to-itiveness more than anything else. It's not something you just pick a board up and just do. But when did you start the skateboarding?
I started skateboarding kind of when most of the world started skateboarding, which would have been around 99, which is when the first Tony Hawk video game came out and took the world by storm. I was one of many kids that during that time frame, everyone wanted a skateboard, and I also wanted one, and I got one, but I was one of the few people that actually used it and then kept using it over the years.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That is amazing. And what drew you to podcasting? I mean, in terms of, you hadn't done anything like that in the past. Why a podcast, other than, of course, what you said there, gave you the opportunity to be an inspiration outside of the borders of your own city, town. I mean, it's worldwide. But what do you find the most passionate thing for you about connecting with people through the podcast?
Yeah, so I guess how that started was I was the guest on a Minneapolis-based skateboarding podcast where they interviewed, skateboarders and shop owners and whatnot. I was interviewed as a guest on that, and that was in Minnesota. And I remember driving back home, which like I said, I live about 90 miles east of Minneapolis. I remember driving back home and thinking to myself, wow, that was really fun, but I feel like I could do it better than that. And it wasn't, trying to talk down about it. It was just those guys were just doing it purely for fun. They were drinking. It wasn't really organized or set up very well. Like one of the microphones was duct taped to a stand. It was one of those things where they weren't treating it like a business, but I always
sorry, I got to laugh about that.
Wow.
No, for real. But I always had a business mind. And so I remember driving back and I was like, wow, I think I would be good at that. And I really enjoyed that. I want to give that experience to other people. And so it was in the back of my mind for, I want to say maybe 6 months or maybe even a year and a half. I forget what year it was. But it was quite a while. It was in the back of my mind of like, that's something I would like to do at some point. And I was running into this issue where passion is like my brand. So like I have apparel and stuff that says passion on it. And all of my friends that didn't skate would say, hey, I would wear your brand, but I don't want to look like a poser because I don't skate. And I thought that was kind of silly. Yeah, and I was like, you can support your friend's local business. So anyways, it got thinking about how can I get people to realize that it's fine to wear my brand that don't skate. And so I talked to this local rapper. His name's Miles Bolivar. I talked to him, and I was like, hey, man, what do you think about being like a brand ambassador for my shop? Because I already sponsored skateboarders and stuff. I was like, I could sponsor you, and you could wear passion-branded merchandise at shows. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So then I told him, well, I don't actually know you hardly at all, so we should hang out so I can actually get to know who you are. And so a week later, he came over to my house, and we had a couple of beers, and we ended up talking for a good couple hours. And when we were done, I told him, like, man, this should have been a podcast episode. I've been thinking about doing one. What do you think about coming over in a week and recording this conversation again? I don't know if I'll actually use it or not. But I'd like to try. And he said, yeah, sure, why not? So he came over a week later, and we set my laptop that I already had between us. I have a picture of us. Set it between us and just use the internal mic with Audacity, which is just a free recording program, and recorded the first episode of my show. And the whole thing was I always had like a connection and felt this kind of spark when I would talk to other skateboarders. It's a whole conversation with skateboarders of like, we have a family, worldwide. People say that all the time in the industry because you connect with other skaters. And I always thought that was unique to skateboarding. But then when I had that conversation with Miles, it made me realize that the reason we had this connection was because between skateboarders, we were both really passionate about skateboarding. And so talking to somebody about something they're passionate about, there's this energy that sparks. And I realized that it wasn't because of skateboarding. That's the case with anybody that you talk to if they're talking about something that they're passionate about. And listening to him talk about music, I found so many similarities, and it was really interesting to me. And it was really cool because it opened up the world a lot. I felt like I was not fully closed off, but I felt like skateboarding was my world, and that was kind of it. And that kind of opened my eyes to that doesn't have to be true. And I found that as I recorded more episodes, like the second one, I asked a friend of mine who had a pet care company, and I was like, hey, would you come over and do this? I don't know if I'll use it or not. And she came over, I recorded it, but I prepared questions that time, and it turned out better than I thought. And same thing, there was that same kind of energy, but it was this time about animals. And so I ended up doing a whole 10-episode season of that. I went back and re-recorded both those first ones with actual microphones and everything. And I recorded a whole 10-episode season where each guest was from a different industry, and then edited the whole thing and gave myself a month to market and promote it, kind of similar to like an album, and got in contact with my local radio station. And so from the first episode ever, it premiered on the radio, and it just kind of snowballed and took off from there.
Awesome.
That's so amazing.
Your podcast is a radio show as well?
Yeah, it's still on the radio. It's on every Wednesday and Sunday night at 7 p.m. on Converge Radio 101.9 FM where I live. And then they also run snippets from episodes as like regular commercials on I-94, which is 94.1 FM.
Thanks,
that's fantastic.
That sounds familiar there, Lisa?
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I would love for our audience to know is that for your podcast, you get in the car, and Chris just got back from a trip, and when we were having a conversation before we started the show, he was saying that he just wouldn't do it. It's part of his passion is to be there in person and be in communion and connection with the person physically to do the interview. So, and not only that, it's the time that it takes, and it's the passion that you're putting into it afterwards to get it right so that you can put it out there. But I would imagine, Chris, and you can answer this, when you wake up every morning, you're excited to face your day. It's not a job. It's a reflection of who you are and what you're doing to make a difference and inspire other people and really live your purpose and pursue your passion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Am I right?
Yeah, and every episode, there's been 160 full-length episodes that are all like 45 minutes, to an hour or even longer than that. There's 160 of those out, but there's many, many more that I did short-form ones. Like I did a 7-minute one with Genuine, that dude who sings Pony, backstage at a music festival recently, and I did a short one with a singer of the Plain White Tees. I've done like lots of those ones as well, but all of them have been in person. And so I used to fly out to California, and I've done episodes in San Francisco, and I've done them in Santa Cruz. I've done them in Austin, Texas. I've been out to New York for interviews. I've been down to Milwaukee, and I've been to all over the place. But yeah, I do all of them in person. And the truth is, if I wasn't doing them in person, this would feel like a job. And I don't want it to be a job. I've been self-employed basically my whole adult life, and it's never really felt like a job. I will say, though, in order to make something that most people do as a hobby, which like a podcast, most people's podcasts are hobbies for them. In order to do something that everybody else does for free as a hobby and make a living doing it, it does take a lot of work. You have to make it better than what everybody else's product is, and that does take a lot of time and energy. So I put off doing video for a long time. Even though I was doing all my interviews in person, they weren't actually recorded on video for quite a while. And even once they were, I wasn't really comfortable with how they looked yet. They weren't up to the standard I set for myself. And it wasn't until this past, about a year ago, I got 2 more cameras and lighting. So it's like a 3-camera setup with lighting and the whole thing, and start taking YouTube seriously. But there is a lot of time and energy that goes into doing that in order to live the dream. But that's going to be the case, I think, with any career. Anytime it's a career and not exclusively a hobby, there's going to be parts of it that aren't your favorite thing to do. But, you have to be able to make a business out of it.
Sure.
Yeah. Setting up a 2-shot, 1-shot, 2 people in a frame, then doing 1 shot, seat left and right, and then editing it all together. It does take some time. And it takes. Yeah,
it's actually the short form that takes longer, though. It's all the TikToks. I'll cut an hour-long interview, and there'll end up being 20, 30, maybe even more, little clips that I'll have to add captions to and sometimes animations to and whatever, and they'll go on all the social media platforms. But, that's just, I don't mind doing it. I'm working on that. And while I'm looking at interviews and editing clips with people I'm a huge fan of, I get to interview music artists I'm a huge fan of all the time. I've got to interview my all-time favorite painter who was from France, who inspired me to paint. I've interviewed pro skateboarders and pro snowboarders, and I went to Green Bay to interview a Packers player, and I'm a huge Packers fan. Me sitting there and editing clips, even though that's not my favorite thing in the world to do, it's hard to be upset about it. I'm doing that from my porch or in front of my fireplace while I'm sipping coffee. So I definitely make the best out of it.
That's great.
Oh, no, that's so much fun. So much fun. And I can feel your passion, actually. And passion is energy, and that's something that in person it's awesome, but it also comes through over digital lines. It comes through on YouTube and in everything that you do. Passion is one of the highest forms of energy, and it's we are both passionate about everything that we do. And Lisa and I, when we started this podcast several years ago. I've had so much fun. It's the one thing that it's the one consistent thing I do every week, and I've come to really, really love it and look forward to it. And Lisa and I have got to be good friends. And just between you, me, and the fence post, Lisa and I have never met each other in person.
Yeah, that's so crazy. To spend as much time as the two of you have without actually meeting is wild.
Yeah. But it's possible, and it is something that, and we know each other like the back of our hands, and we know about our lives, and the interesting thing is, and we've got so many stories that we've told over the years. She's told stories about her life, me about mine, experiences that we hope our audience has really, really enjoyed, and we've had guests that have been really cool, like yourself, and it's wonderful it's all passion. Literally. The only way you can do this and really have fun at it is if you're passionate about it.
Absolutely.
I'm passionate about just about everything: golf and music and and whatever it may be that I'm involved in, and I've got my hands in a lot of different things, and they're all passions of mine. Not all pursued at the same time every day, or every day. I mean, sometimes
right.
I'll kick back and play some drums 2, 3, 4 times a month, but I'm extremely passionate when I do it. Or going out and listening to music. I mean, this is what we got. But I admire what you're doing because, and that you've set a bar for yourself that you're not only achieving it, but passionately achieving it and loving it. I mean, that.
Yeah, well, life's a whole game, right? Like, it's supposed to be fun.
Game. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I try to find ways to really enjoy and make a game out of kind of anything. So, like social media, right? Like, you talk to anyone that works on social media, and everyone, for the most part, will complain about all the time it takes and all the whatever and algorithms and all of that. But I look at it as like a game. It's fun. It's like it's fun to try to see, I wonder if I can get something to get more, how can I make a clip get more views than any other one I've gotten? It's fun. It's a challenge to try to dissect that and figure out why does it work this way. You know what I mean? One question that I like to ask people all the time is, if money didn't matter to you, how would you spend your time? And I think if you can figure out whatever that is, then you can use that as a base and you can build your lifestyle and career around that. For me, I genuinely feel if I didn't need money at all, I would do pretty much exactly what I'm currently doing. Maybe I'd slow my pace slightly, so I'd be less stressed out.
Yeah, right.
But I would still be doing exactly what I'm doing, and that's how I know I'm on the right path.
That's a good point. That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
And I think when you're in the creative flow, so you're creating your own reality. And I love listening to your episodes. There was one episode, and I apologize, I don't remember which episode of Passion Pod it was, that you were talking about your early beginnings as a graffiti artist until I think you got arrested, which I hope you don't mind me mentioning. But I think a lot of things, it's like that transformation. But you mentioned something about not thinking of yourself as a serious artist, and you are amazingly off the charts talented. You do these incredible murals, and just the characters you create, the things that you do, I'm just blown away by. But, if what I think, and this is what I would love for you to share with the audience, is if, when you were a kid and you thought, well, geez, I don't consider myself an artist because I didn't do that, how you bridge that gap and how you say, I own this, wow, no, you know what, I am worthy of claiming this title because this is one of my gifts and I can share it with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with anything in life, a lot of times it takes some kind of a trigger, and it's not always a positive thing. A lot of times it's a negative thing, such as me opening my store. That came from my parents growing up always talked about the next stage of life. When you kids are done with sports, we'll finally have time to be able to do this. When you guys have jobs, we'll finally be able to do this. When you guys go off to college, we'll finally be able to do this. When we retire, we'll finally be able to do this. They always talk like that, and preached having stability and saving for retirement and all that stuff. And then in the course of one day, really, this is in November of, I forget which year, 2012, I think. In the course of one day, my dad, my mom walked out on my dad, and he had a heart attack and almost died. And everything that they had planned for as long as I could remember was gone. You know what I mean? My dad, he's okay now, but still, their marriage is gone, which meant their finances were not in a space to really do anything. Everything they had built towards and they were waiting for was taken from them.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to sit around and wait for that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What happened for me with art was kind of similar. I was going through a divorce at the time. I was with my ex-wife for 15 years. And so I was going through a divorce, and I was really, really depressed, probably, I guess, the worst depressed I've ever been in my life. And I always have been kind of a people pleaser, and I think the older you get, the harder it is to try new things because you expect, you feel like you have to be good at everything that you do. And when I was at that space, mentally and emotionally, it was the first time in my life where I genuinely didn't care what people thought about me anymore. because I just didn't really care about anything, frankly, at that point in time. And so it was the first time where I was like, well, I could paint something, and who cares if no one likes it? Like, it really doesn't matter, And so I started painting these colorful, like monsters that were just kind of like cute and goofy. And I did it as like a way to escape, the darkness that I was at in my life at the time. And I would give them to friends of mine, and then eventually I'd have other friends ask me, if they could get one, and I'd say, well, I don't have any left. They'd say, oh, okay, well, how much can I pay you to paint one? You know what I mean? And so it just kind of snowballed from there. But it took a really long time for me to call myself, an artist. It wasn't until I was getting like paid, opportunities before I really started calling myself an artist. And, if I wouldn't have gone through my divorce, that I don't know that I ever would have started. Like I said, I think a lot of times it takes some kind of trigger in somebody's life to do it. It doesn't have to. Sometimes the trigger can just be listening in on something like a podcast that makes them go, oh, wow, I could just do that. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of times it takes a trigger for somebody.
Yeah, sure. I think so.
And some people in tarot, they call it a tower moment. Go ahead. Sorry, Michael. Go ahead. What were you saying?
No. I was going to say it is. It's usually for most people takes some sort of cosmic 2x4 in their life to recognize where they are, because they're sort of just kind of going along on autopilot. And you've got so much potential, yet that potential's not being realized because you're expending energy in other places, and sometimes those places are negative. And to realize that, have the realization that you had at that time after divorce. I mean, I've been divorced twice. There's lots of realizations that can come from that. And it's turning a page, and we all have chapters in our life. I've got dozens, and you've got many chapters, and so does Lisa, that we've started. And we've ended a chapter and started a new chapter. We're always it's not only game life, but it's also a book we're writing for ourselves. And that those things happen, and it's nice to see that although you were in a sort of a negative space after it did occur, which is, I guess, normal for many people. I love the way that you're perceiving things. As you're looking back on your life, I'm loving the way that you're perceiving the things that have occurred to you, and how those things relate to you today, and how you feel about yourself and your life today. That's really inspiring.
One
thing that I think a lot of people, as we get older, we feel like all of our time needs to be productive. You know what I mean? Because we have that never-ending to-do list. So anything that we don't view as productive is hard to make time for. And so something like art, for a lot of adults, they're like, well, that's not helpful. All it does is cost me money. It's not helping me in my career in any kind of way. And it's just about figuring out that, like, you don't have to always do something that's productive. Like, it's okay to just do something just because you feel like doing it without there being any, like, outcome. You don't have to have something to show for it. You can just do something like art because you feel like it. And one other thing I like to tell people, especially along the art things go, and it's the same way with like music or a lot of different things. Nobody has to know. Like, you don't have. A lot of people are embarrassed. They're too embarrassed to do it because they're like, oh, what if I'm horrible? Everyone's going to think I suck. Whatever. Nobody has to know that you did the thing. Like, you can paint something and you can throw it away if you don't like it, and you don't have to tell anybody. You know what I mean?
No,
or you could. Yeah, you could learn how to make music and not show anybody the music that you make. You could try like playing around on Photoshop and doing design stuff digitally and just never show it to anybody if you don't feel like it. There doesn't have to be pressure on anything that you do to be successful, especially if it's just something that currently isn't your career. It doesn't have to be anything.
Sure.
So true.
So I have a question for you. So when you went from creating these little monsters and people starting to want your pieces of art, how did you transition then to taking on a big mural? Because then all of a sudden it's a different medium, a different substance that you're working on. I guess canvas. It's a wall. Which is different in and of itself, which can be really undaunting. And you're looking and you go, yeah, I got this great design. And you show it to somebody, you sell them the idea, and then you go, wow, I don't know exactly how this is going to happen. And, could you share a little bit about taking that leap of faith?
Yeah.
For sure. Well, so I always wanted to, like, once I started painting, it was pretty early on into that the thought hit me of, because I did used to spray graffiti when I was growing up, was like my art would translate well to a wall. I would love to paint this big somewhere public. Like I had been wanting to do that. And so a friend of mine, her name's Chelsea Wemberg, she does a thing in Eau Claire in my hometown called Artfly. And so she's an artist, and she does all these like pop-up art shows. And it's just like her volunteering. She doesn't make money doing it. It's just her doing that. And so she created a lot of art opportunities for people. And we were friends, and I told her on multiple occasions, like, hey, if you ever like know of an opportunity for me to paint one of my monsters big on a wall somewhere, please let me know. Because I don't know how I would get anyone to hire me for that, because I didn't have that experience. Mm-hmm. And so she had started this project called Color Block. And so it was a mural project where I think the first year I did it, there was like a dozen of us or something. And so she found a business owner that in this alleyway that was all dingy, and honestly, like there were drug problems back there. It was kind of by the homeless shelter. It was just this really drab space. And she convinced him to let artists paint the walls to kind of like brighten up the space, and made it a whole project. So the murals were supposed to be, I want to say 6 feet by 6 feet or something. And each artist was given like a small stipend to cover, basically cover the materials. But it was for first-time muralists. That was kind of the point of it, was for people to paint their first mural without it having a ton of pressure on it. And so she called me one day and told me, hey, this, if you were serious about it, this could be the right opportunity for you. And I said, absolutely, I want to do that. And I've kind of always had the mentality, I think opening my own business, especially at a young age, taught me that I don't have to know how to do anything, but I can figure it out. Yeah. Working for yourself, you don't have a boss that you can call and say, hey, what do I do when this problem comes up? You just have to figure it out. And so I've kind of always had the attitude that I can figure it out. If other people can do it, then I must be able to do it too. I just got to figure out how it works. And so, so they gave me the opportunity to paint, and I actually painted a lot bigger than I was supposed to, but I designed a mural for it. Yeah. And I asked a couple other friends of mine that painted murals. I was like, hey, can you give me advice? Is there a certain kind of paint I need to use? Like, how am I supposed to do this so that way I don't mess it up? And you got to remember, paint, you can just paint over. Like, if you make a mistake, you can touch it up. Like, you can fix it. So I asked for some advice, and this is a really basic one that only matters for murals, but it was like a cinder block type wall. And one of the pieces of advice I'd gotten from this other muralist was take a picture of it on like an iPad or, with your phone, and then put it on your computer, and use the lines that are in the cinder blocks as a grid, and then put your design over that grid, and then you can see where the intersection points would be. So that way you can have it all like size-wise actually look right. And so that's what I did. And it took me longer than anybody else, I think, for that mural. But it turned out really good, and ended up winning second place for best new mural for the whole city, not even for the project.
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, and then that kind of took off, and I got hired for other projects. And each of the last 2 years, I got first place for best new mural for much larger projects than that one. Art just kind of took off. But it's just, I guess what I tell people is, like, you can figure it out. It's not a matter of you can. It's just a matter of figuring out, like, how am I going to do something? Successful people, and in kind of any like realm, in my opinion, they never ask themselves if they can do something. They always just ask how they can do something, because you can do it. It's just how are you going to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's okay to make mistakes too.
Yeah,
right.
Of course. Yeah, well, everyone makes some mistakes. You know what I mean? You see the people who are most successful, and you see their best work all the time. But all those people make mistakes too. Like, you have to start somewhere, and you can't have like the expectation where everything's going to be perfect, because it isn't perfect for anybody, and nobody has that expectation of you either.
You're right. I went out to the Van Gogh Museum. I'm thinking, or even looking at some of these big paintings that these masters did. And I'm going, well, that's not really perfect. Like, his hands weren't really great. Like, I mean, he's amazing. But I think that that's really the wisdom in it. We I don't know what it was in society where we thought that everything that we did had to be perfect, and that if we were failing, that there would be a problem, that we had to succeed at everything we did. I'm not really sure where that came into consciousness, but
I think we naturally compare ourselves to people around us, right? And before the internet, it was just purely the people around you or somebody you saw on TV. But those were the people that you used as a base level of, like, this is what the expectation should be. And with the internet and social media, you follow all these artists or all these people that you're a fan of that are incredible at what they do, and that sets the benchmark then, and you think that that's what you have to be, and that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, true. Look at Jackson Pollock. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean... Yeah. And in terms of appreciating your own work, I think the whole idea is that people, and I agree with you, by the way, what you said earlier. Just don't tell people. People can spit all over your dreams because of their own inadequacies, their own doubts and fears in their own life. They just impress those.
It always is. Yeah. Anytime somebody is saying anything negative or critiquing you, if they're not doing it in a way to try to help you, it's always just a reflection of them being insecure about their own thing. They're jealous and going, man, I wish I was doing this, and I'm mad because this other person's doing it, so I'm going to lash out.
Exactly. I mean, and bullying, I think, has its roots in that. Your feelings of someone's feelings of inadequacy, and they have to build themselves up by bringing somebody else down. And a lot of people have talents and gifts that are still at this particular point undiscovered, because they just, you get into this diatribe of the word success. You feel that the benchmark as to whether or not it's going to be you're going to enjoy it is whether it's going to be a success for you, instead of looking at it as, this is something I'm passionate about. How does it make me feel? And that's what I ask people. How does it make you feel? When you do that, how do you feel? And it doesn't matter whether it's the definition, the classic definition of success for you, monetary or otherwise. The success is actually in the way that it makes you feel. And if it makes you feel good, it makes you feel the life is fun, and you're passionate about it, and when you do it, hours just seem to flow by, you're in a zone, then it's a success for you. It's because you're involved and it's making you feel awesome, and those feelings can be overlap into other areas of your life. And that's the way I tell my girlfriend all the time. It's like I feel great because I'm doing what I enjoy. Whether it makes money or not is not the litmus test.
You got to look at, like, okay, so what's the actual definition of success, right? The actual definition of the noun of success is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose.
Right.
So that does not mean financially. That does not mean that it needs to be your career. It does not mean that you need to have praise from other people or that you need to win an award, or that. None of that is what success means, right? Exactly. It's accomplishing whatever your aim and purpose was. And your aim and purpose when you start making music or you start doing some artwork or whatever is to find enjoyment in what that thing is. Like, you're doing it because it makes you happy, because you feel like you're learning something, because it's exciting or whatever. Like, look at what your actual aim was for it. Did you accomplish that? And usually when people are starting out and they're doing, creating whatever art or whatever that hobby thing is, their goal isn't to make money doing it. Like, you don't start golfing with the intent, or most people, especially as you get older, you don't start golfing with it going like, this is only a success if this becomes my career. It's like, no, like, you're going golfing with friends, and the whole point is to have fun with your friends. Now, you get, competitive with yourself and you want to, like, do better or whatever, but the point in the first place was to have fun. So as long as you're having fun, then it is a success.
It's true. That's true. And as long as it makes you feel awesome, feel excited, it makes you happy. It makes you feel gratified, and it actually ups your self-love. It increases how you feel, the feelings you have for yourself, the positive feelings you have for yourself. It's like I tell people all the time that if you have something that you're good at, that you love doing, let that define you instead of the other things that are out there that people tell you should be doing that you really don't enjoy, right?
Here's the thing. Like, people don't care what you're doing with your life. They don't care. People all the time, people have this like thought in their mind that they don't want to disappoint people. Nobody's thinking about you. Nobody cares. They really don't. They don't care.
Yeah.
Right,
so don't let whatever things you think they want you to do, don't let that dictate what you choose to do with your life, because they really don't care what you're doing.
Yeah. In the end, your friends and those that you run into will admire you because you've got a smile on your face, you're happy, you're enjoying life.
Right.
And
that's all we want is for you to be happy.
Exactly. And a lot of times they don't have that themselves because they haven't given themselves the opportunity to put themselves in that place.
Well, they're not looking at the question they need to ask themselves is what would make me happy? Like, what would my ideal life look like? And they're not looking at that. They're looking at, how do I, get promoted in this position? How do I make more money? Here's one thing is, a lot of people very few people out there turn down promotions, right? That's just kind of like a fact of the world, is you get your job, and regardless, like, when you get your job, there's usually an intent of like, I'm doing this job for this reason. It makes the amount of money and whatever. A lot of times people reach the goal of whatever that goal is, and they lose sight of why they're doing that thing. And so when the opportunity presents itself to make more money, to take a promotion, they take it and they think that that's what they're supposed to do. But whatever that promotion is, or whatever that next step is, doesn't necessarily align with what they set out to do in the first place. Like, I interviewed this owner of this jewelry company, right? And I remember having this conversation with her, and she had told me, like, yeah, well, we've been getting so big that, like, all I'm doing now is, like, managing the brand and people, and I'm not, like, designing jewelry anymore. And the reason I started this was design jewelry. And so she had became so successful, she was no longer doing that. And so then what happens? She's growing the company in order to make more money. Well, why'd she start the business in the first place? You don't have to take that next step financially in what other people's version of success is if that doesn't align with what you actually want to do. And like with my show, I could make more money doing what I do, but the money is not the important part. Like, if I intentionally was like, okay, what business owners or what brands could I align myself with to interview them, to potentially charge them money to promote this, that, or whatever, I could make more money if that was the goal. But I didn't start doing this with the intent of, I want to make as much money as possible. I made more money when I was 22 working at Verizon. You know what I mean? Instead, I am going and hanging out with and learning from and having conversations with my favorite people in the world, like people that I would have paid so much money to just like meet in the past. And now I'm working with them and doing that. And if it takes me longer to reach a level of success as far as numbers or whatever, I'm fine with that, because where I'm at currently is sustainable. And if I make more money and I reach more people and all of that, wonderful. Like, that's obviously something I would love to work towards, but I'm happy doing exactly what I'm doing with exactly where it's at. There's a reason I haven't hired a staff. You know what I mean? Like, I could do more if I hired an editor. I could do more if I tried to get a manager. I could do more if I had a media assistant when I go to, whatever. But then there'd be more pressure to make more money to be able to pay those people to do whatever. I'm at a place where I'm happy and successful doing exactly what I'm doing. And my version of success, I have it. It doesn't matter if that's anybody else's version of success.
That's true. And you're the only one that can define what success means to you and what happiness and fun and joy means to you. And what brings you those elements as well. And I think Lisa and I are in the same boat with that. We just enjoy doing what we do. The many things that we have our hands in, just enjoy all of it. And don't feel guilty if you can't do one thing or another. We keep the negative feelings at bay by making sure that we're not investing in them. And investing positive feeling.
And I don't know if either one of you got to see the Tom Shadyac. It just reminded me of that, Chris, when you said that. But Tom Shadyac was, a film director in Hollywood and had a house and had all of these managers. I mean, he did the Ace Ventura movies and The Nutty Professor and Liar, Liar, all of those movies. And he said he had all of these different properties. He had a manager for this and a manager for that. And then he was in a biking accident. And all of a sudden, it was like he had this near-death experience, and he asked himself 2 questions. What's wrong with the world, and what can I do about it? And then he's like, it all had to do with him. I am. And it was like how his life changed and how he shifted. Like, what is it that is important to me? Like, I'm, doing all these things for chasing all this stuff, but finding out that he was really empty. And that's one of the things I really love about your podcast, because you have an opportunity to connect with other people about their passions. And you've talked to them about how they overcome their fears and some of the things that as people transition from where they think that they need to be in their life and where they end up. It's just phenomenal. And so for any of our audience members who haven't tuned in, I mean, Passion Pod is available. You can find all the links, I think, through passionpod.org, and maybe there's another way to find it, but that's probably the best way to find out where it's streaming, and always on YouTube. But I would love to ask you, out of all of these myriad of interviews that you've done, what are some of the most memorable words or moments that you felt were really transformational for you?
Oh man, there's so many of them. Passion Pod, for real, you can just Google Passion Pod. It's everywhere. You can go to passionpod.org and there will be links everywhere. But if you just Google it, it'll pop up, and you could Google Passion Pod, Apple Podcasts, and there it is. Passion Pod, Spotify, Passion Pod, YouTube. It's not hard to find. So you can just look at that. I will say one off the top of my head. And I'm not surprised that this clip went viral. For the first time clip I'd go viral. It's at 1.2 million on TikTok, and I posted it 2 weeks ago or something. And I'm not surprised, because this was with my friend Wayne Hoffman. So Wayne Hoffman is one of the bigger illusionists in the world, and he's a mind reader. And I interviewed him in 2021, I want to say, down in Florida. And that interview was the last time I was ever nervous for an interview. Driving to his house, this is the first really successful person that I was interviewing that I didn't have a connection to, really. I had to go through a secure gate where they had to scan my driver's license, do the whole thing. And I sat with him, and from the moment I sat down at his table, I just was calm. And I've learned so much from that man. We become really good friends and hung out on multiple occasions when we weren't recording, but we recorded that interview. And then we recorded a part 2 interview pretty recently when he was coming through Wisconsin doing some performances. Those ones, if anyone wants to listen to an episode that is going to change the way you think about your life, it would be those ones. So
I
Wayne
did
Hoffman,
listen to that episode.
42, I think, and then the new one is episode 158. But yeah, listen to those too. One of the things, I guess, that changed the way that I thought that came from him was I was talking to him, and I don't even know if this one was during an interview or not, but I was basically telling him I'm grateful I've been able to interview these people, but certain people may be out of reach or whatever. And he kind of changed my way of thinking. He goes, well, why would they be out of reach? And I said, well, my show's not big enough yet. And his response was, no, your show's the biggest podcast in the world. And I said, since when? He goes, well, what do you expect it to be? I said, well, eventually the biggest podcast in the world. He said, so stop talking about it like that. Just be that.
Yeah.
Be what you expect.
We talk a lot about that on this show, about being the person. Stop putting the person you want to be out somewhere in the future. You have to be that person now. You have to be that frequency, resonating that frequency now, in order to be in that situation. You're not going to attract anything to you if you're resonating the past and you're looking towards the future. We always talk about that one.
Yeah, and so another thing, which was the clip that went really viral on TikTok, is from Wayne Hoffman. he said in it, he goes, I want to give a challenge to anybody who's listening or watching. I want you a week to put in your calendar a week from now on the calendar, gather 5 no's. And he said, and I want you to pick 5 questions that you can ask of people that could range anywhere from asking for a free cup of coffee up to think of the person you look up to the most in the world, like the biggest celebrity in whatever, realm, whoever would be the person that you would want to talk to more than anyone else in the world, and then reach out to them, whether it's to their management or whatever, and ask to meet them or to have a phone call, call with them. Ask for 5 no's and do that. And you'll be surprised by how many times people actually say yes. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people have this attitude of, well, you can't just ask for things all the time. And there is truth as far as, like, you don't want to be the annoying person. Like, you're not going to go ask everyone for money because that's ridiculous. Why would they do that? Because you should be bringing value to people as well. But stop thinking that things are out of reach. Like, you could reach out and try to, like, contact, like, as an example, my all-time favorite painter, the guy who inspired me to start painting, this artist from France, his name's Luca Buffo, spelled like Lucas Buford, Lucas_Buford, if you want to look him up on the internet. He paints these kind of colorful characters, which is really why, like, I had started painting characters. I reached out to him one day, just through Instagram. I was like, who knows if he's ever going to respond, but I really want to buy a painting from him if I could ever afford it. So I DM'd him and I said, hey, I don't know if you'll see this. I doubt that I could afford an original painting from you, but, like, I would really love to at least buy a small little drawing or something from you in the future. So if you could tell me what that might cost so I could save up for it, I'd appreciate it. Like, your art means a lot to me. And he responded to me, and I ended up buying a painting from him. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I got a DM from him, and he just says, what's your phone number? And so I sent it, and then I get a phone call, and it's him. And he's like, hey, you live over near Minneapolis, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I'm coming through the United States and doing a 10-city tour, filming this documentary about this art book that I put out. If you want to do an interview, like, I'd happily do one when I'm in Minneapolis if you come out. And I said, absolutely. So a few days before my birthday, I was out in Minneapolis, and I got to sit with the dude who inspired me to paint and record a whole interview with him. And, like, that was my work for that day. And it happened because I reached out, not expecting him to respond, but I just reached out and asked. And I think if people are willing to ask the universe, in any of these situations, again, not obnoxious things like asking people to do these huge favors for you, but ask for the opportunities that you're looking for, you'd be surprised how often, like, you're going to hear yes for things. Like, Wayne Hoffman learned that because he got an Ellen DeGeneres long before he was famous, and it was because he had wanted to be on that, so he sent an email. And it just so happened that, like, somebody backed out or had to cancel kind of last second that they had lined up for a guest, and he made himself available. And he's like, I could read minds on the show. It would solve the solution for you. They needed somebody. What he did aligned with it, and it worked out. And that catapulted him to a lot of success. You just got to be willing to ask for things.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Thank
true.
you.
Don't ask, don't get.
Such a great reminder.
Don't ask, don't get. Yeah. People are caught up in their own inadequacies and doubts and fears of being rejected, and really you've got to get over all that, because the real joy is in pursuing, is in asking. That's the real joy. You'll find that a lot of people, I find it in the acting business, a lot of people, when I go to LA and start talking to people, they're just people just like anybody else. And it's you that's put them up on a pedestal. It's their publicists that have put them up on a pedestal. It's the industry that's put them on a pedestal. But bottom line is, it's work. It's the work they do. And
and they don't succeed on everything either.
No.
Your favorite music artist, it's not like every song from their album is a hit.
Yeah.
It's not like every, Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't get every single role that he's ever tried out for.
Yeah, my brother was.
These people aren't perfect either,
Yeah, my brother was telling me that he gets maybe a shot at one at every 200 voiceover auditions that he does. One in every 200. He says it's the most challenging aspect of the business, and everybody wants to be a voiceover artist. And I'm like, he says, not that it can't happen, but you've got to understand that it's a numbers game, and you've got to have fun doing it. You've got to have fun doing it, and it will happen. We talk a lot in the show about the energy, about energy and positive energy, and the frequency of energy. And what I can sense, and I'm going to apologize because I've been so freaking busy in this last couple of weeks that I haven't had a chance to take a look at your podcast, which I will do on YouTube. However, the overall sense that I get, and I'm happy that you could be on the show, the overall sense I get is that you have discovered for you how you can live, how to thrive on higher frequencies because of the experience. And by the way, you're blowing me away because you're only 35. I mean, I'm like double what you've got in the bag at this
34,
point.
but yeah.
34.
Making it older.
Double, okay? I'm approaching double your age. But it's very, very, very cool and inspiring to know where you are at this time in your life, and to basically understand, based on my own life, of where you're going to be in the next 20 years. It's just what you know now, and how you amass that knowledge is spectacular. And in my view, the frequencies that you're operating at are going to continue to get you there, because it's a lot of things that a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into, and thought into, and investment into, in terms of emotions and other things. It's just, I tell them all the time that if you can just understand where you're putting your energies, and what those energies are creating for you, how they're making you feel, and how everything is fitting together in your life, and you're asking those questions of yourself, you're gonna go places that other people around you are going to be envious of, and it's likely that you'll have a whole new group of friends within a very short period of time. Because as soon as you elevate your frequency, you're done. You're moving on. It's like you're on a rocket ship.
Totally. I mean, I think it is really important to surround yourself with people that inspire you. Mm-hmm. And it is hard sometimes, because that means other friendships will kind of fade and fall to the wayside. And it's not like you're intentionally trying to leave people behind, but find people that inspire you, because that's how you're going to get to the places that you want to get to. I remember I interviewed this bassist. His name's Ian Allison. You can find him on all the socials as Ian Martin Allison. And he's just a incredible, incredible man. That's one of the more inspiring interviews I've ever had. A couple of things from it. One thing he told me that he had learned that changed his life was he was touring the country and internationally too, playing with different, like he was playing with Kelly Clarkson for a while and stuff on her tours. So he's played on all these things. And his marriage was falling apart. And they were in divorce counseling or in marriage counseling. And the counselor asked him, to just write down what his goal, what he wanted out of life, not necessarily the marriage. And in it, he wrote, "I want to support my family by playing the bass guitar." And the counselor looked at that, and they talked about it. And this counselor said, "So what we should notice here is you did not say get famous. You did not say make a ton of money. You did not say travel the world. You said make a living playing the bass guitar."
Right.
So what other ways can you do that? And that's what opened his mind up to, I don't have to achieve whatever. I don't have to go down this path of what the next biggest thing would be. I don't have to play with the next biggest music artist or play the next biggest venue. And he started teaching bass lessons online, and now he can work from home. Exactly. He does studio. He's a studio musician for people that come through Minneapolis all the time, and he makes a comfortable living and gets to be with his family all the time.
Exactly.
And he told me, talking about frequency, I asked him how he decides what jobs to do, what songs to hop on, what things to go with, and he told me this, which was really powerful for me. He said that how he decides whether or not he's going to do something or which direction he's going to go is purely based on what feels, in his words, cool. He said whatever thing is attracting him that gives him that feeling where he goes, cool, that is where he puts his time and energy, and that always leads to success.
That's true.
Yeah,
Hey, Lisa,
So true. My word is wow, Chris. I'm like, wow. That's my word. And I just have to say, you are, our time goes by so quickly on this show.
Yeah.
And especially, I would love to have you back, but I love, and I would encourage our audience to please go to Passion Pod, because
Absolutely.
Every episode, it doesn't matter, everyone that I've listened to, it's a reminder that although our journey might be challenging, the rewards when you go through it are immeasurable. And Chris, you exemplify that. I mean, you have such a unique perspective. You have such a wonderful creativity, and your spirit is just unwavering. And I think that if anybody gets anything from this time that we shared with you, it's like dare to believe and dare to live your passion, because that's exactly what you do. And I'm so grateful to you. And I don't know if there's anything you'd like to leave our audience with. And I hope you can come back, because it's just been delightful.
It is wonderful.
Well, I really, you guys are really hyping me up. So thank you so much for everything, for having me on and all the kind words. I would love to be back at some point. I'm easily reachable. And for anybody out there, you can find me, Passion Pod, kind of anywhere. I do read all of my messages on the platforms and stuff. So you DM me on Instagram if you want to get a hold of me and ask me, anything. If there's any way that I can help, I'm more than happy to. I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Until next time.
Love
Absolutely.
Take care.
Outstanding.